Yeah, live.
Good morning, everyone. I, Meenakshi, would like to welcome all of you for the Sunday webinar series hosted by Enajuri. Generally, we have the sessions in the evening. The Sunday education webinar series we have at 6 o'clock in the evening every Sunday. But this session that we are having today is something which we had scheduled earlier, but we had some technical issues, and so we had to reschedule it. And I just hope that everything goes well today. And I would like to welcome everyone who's joined in for the first time. I would like to welcome all of you to the virtual platform of Enajuri. And like most of you must be knowing, we have been conducting this webinar series since the lockdown started. This is basically a virtual platform of Enajuri where we try to connect, we try to build new networks, new contacts, basically try to enhance this platform as a knowledge hub of Enajuri. So in the last 3-4 months, we have been hosting quite engaging and enriching sessions as far as education is concerned. We've had discussions on the national education policy. We've had discussions on inclusive education, children with special needs vis-a-vis education. We've also had discussions on a lot of initiatives and interventions that are happening on ground, just not in Assam, but all across the Northeast. So today's discussion is really very important because we are discussing something which is very relevant in the context of Assam, because we are discussing education in the context of tea gardens. And this, as most of us must be knowing, the tea garden community continues to remain one of the most marginalized communities in Assam. And the issues that they face, are some, there are a wide range of issues that require immediate attention as far as this particular population is concerned. And although there are a lot of provisions, in fact, something like the Plantation Labor Act, for example, Plantation PLA of 1951, which has specific clauses laid down for, paying importance on education as an area. But despite this, what we see on ground is not something which is really something that can be appreciated. There's a lot of work that needs to be still done. So as far as the PLA is concerned, there are specific clauses that would go on to say that if a certain garden has children, at least around 25 children between the age group of 6 to 12, then the garden should be providing, the management should be providing at least a primary school for imparting primary education. But what we see on ground and in terms of the implementation that is happening, there's a lot that remains to be done. In fact, just recently there was news that Himanta Biswa Sarma mentioned that high schools would be started in tea gardens, almost more than 119 high schools. That was that what the government had declared. But what we see on ground in terms of the real challenges that the community is facing, in terms of the number of children that are attending schools regularly. Of course, there's also the gender divide, the gender gap, girl child accessing education, that also remains to be a major issue. And a lot of studies have shown that more than 80% of the state's tea gardens have been defying the Right to Education Act. This has been found in a huge number of tea gardens, because children also engage in plucking leaves. Child labor continues to remain a major problem. Children work at the factories and do not attend schools. So there's a gamut of issues. So I'm very happy to be welcoming this morning a very interesting guest amongst us today, Dr. Arjun Trivedi. Welcome to our session, Arjun. And Arjun has been basically, he's lived and worked in the United States for more than 15 to 18 years almost. And he's held leadership positions in a wide range of companies, like the General Electrical Company. And he's also held research positions at in the field of nuclear and particle physics, like the European Organization for Nuclear Research in Switzerland and the Thomas Jefferson National Accelerator Facility in the United States. And in 2018, Arjun decided to come back and, work for Assam and the community that he, identifies and relates to. He wanted to give back to this part of the world. And in 2018, he founded the Karunar Kheti Trust. And the idea behind this trust is basically, to work for rural communities of Assam for empowerment based on the interconnected areas of education, health, and livelihood. And a very important component of this trust is the Selenghat Valley School. And we are here to discuss more about this particular intervention because this is a school that has been the first stepping stone in the Karunar Kheti Trust and its ambitious landscape. And it is a school particularly built by the people and for the people of the rural communities of Selenghat in Jorhat, Assam. So I take this opportunity to welcome you, Arjun, and
Thank you.
over to you. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Meenakshi. And
just a few ground rules before you start. Basically, we'll have you speak for about half an hour to 45 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. Anybody can pitch in and raise your questions and queries, and we'll carry it like that. And we
yeah,
try to keep it bilingual, so as and when you want to switch to Hindi or Assamese, we would try to cater to
right.
different languages. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Over to you.
Just give me a little reminder as I'm approaching the 40-minute mark. I'll also keep
Sure,
a
sure,
track on
sure.
time.
We'll
But
do that. Yeah. Thank you.
okay. Well, Meenakshi and the Anajori team, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and also to everybody who has signed in today. It's really very humbling to share experiences and be able to reach out to a broader audience. So before I begin, I almost feel like with a sense of responsibility, I must begin by saying, the marginalization of the tea community and all the problems that we face, that you noted with child labor and other things, it is not so trivial, and it is perhaps not so much in the current times, and also as what I see it. The problem of education, as with the rest of the rural areas, and I'm not denying the particular problem of the tea plantations, they are there, but it has to be seen in a very wide perspective now, because often we trivialize it to very small issues. And I'll not go into that today, but or if there's a particular question, we can discuss it. But I wanted to begin with almost with a sense of responsibility, because tea plantations are also working very hard to keep up with the standards of the PLA, and there's a lot of good work happening. So if there's no education in the tea plantation communities, of course it's a particular problem of within the community, but we must also understand that it is connected to a whole larger ecosystem. And so it's a very holistic problem. And it's also profound in that sense, the degrees of compartmentalization and fragmentation that has happened, and as a result of which a lot of finger pointing happens. So I'll not go into that today, but that's exactly why I wanted to do this, to begin in such a way, because I wanted to make coherent all of these different compartments and fragments, which ultimately make it a very trivial finger pointing game. So I wanted to build something coherent, make people come together, because the diversity of all the people engaged in the tea plantations, within the tea plantations and the larger ecosystem and economy, is quite tremendous. And it starts from the colonial era to the modern, emergent, modern India. So anyway, I just felt like I already wanted to begin with that general basis on which I am, or we are trying to work. So and I'll just tell my story in a very quick overview, hopefully hoping that any particular things I can tend to in particular questions. So I have grown up in the tea plantations of Assam, and even as a child growing up, there were certain problems which I could sense. It was not very difficult not to see them. But these problems have been so big that even trying to articulate it in a question has been profoundly difficult. And I was not even able to say or have a discussion with people, because sometimes for these exact reasons that there are just so many different compartments, there's so many different groups thinking they should be doing this or they should be doing that. And anyway, there's a lot of truth to it also. And I just accepted it. And I said, well, maybe that's what it is. And I just stopped asking. And I think very early on, I think I must have been in class 1 or 2 when I kind of stopped. But I stopped even reflecting on it so actively. And I think it went into my subconscious, all these realities that I saw around me. And I saw over the due course of my lifetime, these realities getting worse and worse to an almost like a, I think it's almost at the realm of being unprecedented now in the sense of the economic problems and what is manifesting as a social unrest. And in my mind, I still don't see a coherent solution of stakeholders coming together. For example, even education. I don't think it's fair to blame the tea plantations anymore because for example, my parents are working in a tea plantation, and I see them and I see many other good people doing the best they can, but they cannot do any more till people work together. So, so yeah, somewhere all of this went into my subconscious and I stopped questioning. So to cut a long story short, when I was doing my research in physics, uh, when you're doing research in physics, sometimes you have to ask questions you don't have the answer for. You have to begin like that. You have to kind of step into the unknown. And as I was doing that, I was struggling a lot because suddenly the answer was not at the back of the book that I could solve, and I know the answers there. To get on with my research, I had to ask a question which probably nobody knew the answer of. And I just struggled with that till all of these experiences are very deep, but I kind of cracked open. I saw there was particular experiences that made me realize that I was always too afraid to ask a question around about a reality that I see around me. I mean, I was not trusting the reality I saw around me on the basis of which I needed to ask question, why is this? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but it requires a particular kind of courage. And I began to do that when I was struggling in physics. But the real powerful thing is when that happened in physics, it kind of really opened up my subconscious to me. And in that very instant, as I was thinking about subatomic particles or even the cosmos, in that very instant, the problem, I saw myself as a child and the questions I had growing up. So it all came very clearly to me that Arjun, these are the earliest questions you have, and you must try and answer them. Because even, for example, Einstein, if you truly read his theory of relativity or anything which is profound, and I mean, it's to the scale of the cosmos, I mean, space and time, unifying them in the way he did. You see, he had a very personal story. He was always courageous enough to ask this question, and to him it was, why can I not travel faster than light? And he just stuck with it. So for me to understand relativity, I had to understand Einstein, his particular context, his life. And as I was doing that, it became kind of clear to me that I need to ask the question that I always had as a child. And through those experiences in physics, that I also acquired a kind of a confidence. It's not an arrogant confidence, but it's a humbling one that tells me that, well, you have to begin somewhere. You may not have the answers, and that is quite all right. But you have to somehow be able to live with the questions, and the answers will come sometimes with experience. But you must begin somewhere because sometimes the questions are too big. And I think doing physics for 10 years, it helped me learn how to live with questions I have no answers for and remain in spaces that are mainly based on courage and faith, because there's no analytical answer. So, anyways, it's a long story, but that's what made me realize that I think I should come back. Here is this problem. I've seen it very clearly. I have a feeling for why it is like this. And so, generally, I'll just encapsulate my main conviction. And my main conviction, again, revolves around this idea of fragmentation, where again, I'll begin with the problem of education, where we cannot just blame one party anymore. There must be a way to work together, reach out to other people, different stakeholders, and find out what's going wrong. Uh, as I say this, I can feel the humility in me because this is not easy at all. But that is exactly why I think I want to try and see what we can do about it. So I have kind of put down a series of pictures through which I want to tell the story of how all of this began once I came back in 2018. Payal, can you start the slideshow?
Yeah, just a second.
So I'll take you through tell a story in a sense through these pictures. So when I returned in 2018, I had an idea that education is something that can make coherent this divisive world in my head. I felt, and I had experienced education myself as being divisive. You know, there was either you be a scientist or you study literature, and then there was these differences between science and faith or religion. And then you have the ideals of the constitutions and the laws, and then you have the ground realities. And it felt like you had to pick one, and everything is at odds with one another. And that I struggled with that for a long time. I don't even know how long, but I had this idea that, you know, knowledge is something, it's a collective human enterprise. We all have made it. We all have made it for very real existential conditions. And every child or human being must have access to it for their practical realities and existential realities. And I believe that, and now education, I'm not using very trivially as an academic education. Education just opens the realm of human experience. And it also felt very immediate for these children. So when I returned, actually for 1 year, I was teaching these children in this small house that you see on the tea plantation for 1 year. And that was a very delicate time for my faith also, because many people were wondering, what is this man doing? And I also felt the pressure in a very real sense. Here's this tea plantation with a severe economic problem of how to sustain and how to move on in this time. And here I am just teaching children. And in those moments, I realized, but perhaps that's why I need to do this. Perhaps that's why I need to stick with this, because this is how difficult it is. Because it was really difficult to balance all the questions that were coming to me from family to friends. Anyway, go on to the next slide, Payal. So here is Mineshwar Da. Mineshwar Da works at Boy Sahabi. He's known me since I was a boy. When I came back, I don't know, he kind of always believed in me. He grew up as a subsistence farmer, and he you know, when the small tea growers were first starting out, he was one of its pioneers. He helped many small tea farmers start their own businesses. So much to say, this man had an idea of faith, risk, courage, and many people saying things. So he was this one person I would always go to, and he would tell me, just keep doing it. I know people are saying this, and he would tell me, so and so said this, so and so said that. That what is this man doing? How will this work? He said, just keep at it. And so Mineshwar actually became we are just two trustees, and Mineshwar is the other person. And initially, the early days when we had to register the trust, all the running around, he helped me a lot. And next slide, file. So again, as I was teaching those children, you know, there are just 10 children or 15 children in that picture, but it was becoming 30, 40, 50. And it was the youngest to the oldest, and it was feeling very overwhelming. Like, how do I do this? What's the model of a school? I don't have money, curriculum, it was just overwhelming. So anyway, I was in Majuli for something completely unrelated, and I happened to visit Hummingbird School, and there I met with its founder Bipin and Dharamjit. And there the idea of a community school felt real. I mean, I saw it with my eyes. I saw school buildings made out of bamboo and mud, and I saw local resources being used. So that put a real seed in my mind that, I mean, we have a community, we have skills. Maybe that's the way to go forward. Next slide, Payal. So when I returned, I was still this one person. Of course, Mineshwar was always there, but he was also very busy with the tea plantation work. He was there more like a moral guide. a philosopher friend, always inspiring my courage and faith. But I started walking around and I just started observing local youth. And these were the earliest volunteers. The boy in the middle, his name is Elbish. He was the first boy who worked with me. He kind of believed in me, and I asked him, "Do you want to do this with me?" And the first, I mean, for a month we worked together, and just having him by my side just gave me a lot of courage, And slowly, one volunteer became two volunteers, and we just started that way. We just through volunteer effort, just talking amongst us how to do, what to do. Next slide. So in all of this, I met a man from Sipsagar. He came to know a man from Sipsagar. His name is Uday, but he's an architect in Mumbai now, and he works at grand scales. Um, anyway, so Uday also has an interesting story where after having been to Bombay from Assam, he felt like he needed to do community development. He saw architecture as these real spaces, dynamic spaces. So anyway, I met him, and he was another man that the way he thought and the way he acted just made sense to me, and we just started working very well together. So this was an old building in the tea plantation that was given to us. Said, why don't you try here? Why don't you start here? See what happens. And on the left is the earliest design we made to renovate it. Next slide. And of course, I still don't have any money at that point. So I went to a boarding school in Dehradun, Welland Boys School. I went back there. It was a 20th year school reunion. I didn't really want to go back because I felt like I've not met these boys for 20 years. What am I going to do? One of my friends said, listen, you're starting an NGO. Why don't you go? Maybe you'll get some money. So, okay. I didn't go purely for that, but all right, let's see what happens. So I go back and I start telling my friends what I'm doing. And uh, in a very moving gesture, they raised 2.5 lakhs for me. So, so that's a significant amount for me, having no money. But it also kind of made me believe that perhaps there's a truth in me that people are listening to and believing. Maybe because fundraising was something, just it was the idea of it was, to say the least, not fun. Just to ask for money, it's just. But anyway, so this started the whole process in a very almost a coincidental way. I was there. I was very natural. People were asking me, "So what are you doing?" So I just told them, "This is what I'm trying to do." And so they all organized this, and they surprised me with a check for 2.5 lakhs. So I had some money now. Next slide, Payal. So now when we had that money, so I felt a little bit more confident. And then through the volunteers, we started having really community meetings. Like, so what is this school going to be? Who are the children? Do we need a school? Actually, the need for a school was very clear. I'll tell you in a subsequent slide. But this is an example of the meeting we started to have, discussing everything from what should be the fees to classes, everything we talked about. Our next slide. And then the idea came to construct a school building. So you have 2.5 lakhs, and I clearly didn't want to make a building out of brick and mortar. I wanted to be sustainable, locally sourced. And after having many conversations, these three men stepped forward. They are from Boisabi Tea Estate, Savra community, and they are bamboo craftsmen. And they stepped forward saying, "We'll do it." So this is the picture of Vishnu, Inath, and Rajesh Kaman. Next slide. So then we started having community meetings with construction workers, like, where do we begin? And for me, this is a process for me. I didn't want to give direction. I was more like some kind of a glue to make things coherent, because the idea of coherency in a fragmented world is the theme that I'm always dwelling on, getting people together, giving a place of creativity and mistakes, and allowing that to see how does that unfurl. So that is what I was doing in the beginning, getting people skilled in construction. Next slide. And now this is the meeting with the volunteers and teachers designing the school curriculum. I wanted it to be a process of the people. I was just kind of guiding it along and maybe representing the modern financial, technical, legal world, all that paperwork and things that I took my responsibility and just kept everybody in, to use a sports metaphor, playing, within some very loose parameters and just listening to them, what they were saying, how they wanted to take the school forward, and just make sure that the ball does not go out of the boundary, that's all. Next slide. So you can see this is a very, I really love this picture because you see at the back, there are the men, and you can see Uday, his back is towards us, the man from Sipsagar, or architect. They're doing an exercise to build the model for our school, with bamboo, because Uday said that let's do something which is a little grand, aspirational, and not make, let's challenge ourselves to new levels of technical skills. So he thought, let's do a community meeting. Let's do a building activity together for the model of the house, how we're going to build it, explore the various techniques in craftsmanship and building. So they're building the model at the back. And here are our volunteers. They're designing the administrative processes. Admission was going to start, roll numbers, just as you can imagine, the administration of a school. Next slide. Again, this is also a picture that I really like. Here is the model building going on. It's just so powerful for me to even see people working together. And here's a new model. The men have probably not made such a building exactly. They even went to Nagaland to learn some new techniques. Next slide. Again, this is again a picture of the volunteers. You can see construction happening at the back. And here are volunteers developing curriculum and material for the school when it opens. Next slide. And so this is like the first day, around the time, 2-3 days before, uh, when the school is about to open. And on the left, on top, you can see your first classroom. And it was kind of, on the left, you see two women who pluck leaves, and you see our teachers. It was just, again, so powerful to see many different people coming together from different communities. And when the focus was common, it was very, it's kind of beautiful to kind of dance in and out of diversity and kind of a coherence. It was just very beautiful to observe for me. I was mainly observing and seeing people doing whatever we needed to do. And on the bottom right is another picture. And so there's a story about how the school, what was the immediate reason. So I was still lacking, even after seeing the model, I was still lacking that little push to build the school because the money and everything was still very, I was still not sure how to do that. But once I was walking in the tea plantation, and these are some of the best pluckers of Boisahabi tea estate, and I used to pluck leaves with them, and I just spent time with them. So once I was walking around, and they see the intention I'm living with, and they say, why don't you build a school for us? We need it. We spend a lot of money to send our children far away. We need a good school here. Um, it's very emotional for me, but when they said it, it became very clear to me. It felt like a responsibility was given to me. Try to do this. So I owned it. I said, okay, I'll do my best. We'll do our best. Next slide. So this is also another powerful picture because you see my parents also in it. And I feel like it must have taken them also a lot of courage and faith, and probably still does, to see me on this journey. Um, and here's also another interesting story, a very powerful story is Boisabi tea is an organic tea plantation. Now, when you convert from industrial practices to organic practices, it's not trivial. It sounds very good, but agriculture, the culture aspect also has in it social, human related cultural practices to not just develop organic practices, new way of doing things. Because in some ways, why is chemical farming easy? Because you get it in the market, you spray it on. But when you develop organic material, you really need to think about how. You need to do work that is a little bit more backbreaking. But if you're physically fit, I mean, that's good for you, right? I mean, it empowers your body. But anyway, 20 years of social, cultural, agricultural changes through my parents in Boisabi Tea Estate. And really, my mother in her dairy, she was making liquid manure from cow dung, urine, when nobody was even talking about these things. So that is, I mean, for me, that is very powerful. And just her spirit of trying new things, because she was just very natural at these things. And my father said, can you just scale this up for a tea plantation? So anyway, lots to say in this picture, but in the interest of time, next slide. Again, this is, I really like this picture, because literally we did everything from painting the benches, everything we did as together, getting ready for the school. Next slide. So this is when the school opens. The first, I think this is almost like the first week of school. We opened with 79 to 80 children, and a man from France, Manu. He heard about us and he felt like we're doing a great thing. So he came down and he spent a week with us. Uh, non Manuel is his name. We call him Manu. Uh, Next page. Next slide. So, and also when the school opened, we purposely didn't have any books because even the teachers, I felt like we all had to work very hard to listen to the children, listen to the depths of the problems from the children to our communities. Because I told the teachers that you're just not teachers, you are almost community leaders of some sort. This education is a very holistic problem. And I'm again channeling the same idea that I began this, that the problem of education is not a trivial, fragmented, isolated problem. People must come together. Anyway, that's all I'll say. So here we developed this ideas of a classroom where the child, teacher, parent dissolved. I wanted everybody to normalize. Not I mean, it was very natural for me, for people also, that let's do this, let's explore what education is. And till we are comfortable with one another, till we trust one another, you can really not ask a question that is brave, because too often you ask a question and you're feeling judgment. A child feels judgment, a teacher feels judgment, a parent feels judgment, and we are burdened by these judgments. So, in some ways, a lot of this work is very emotional work for us to just accept ourselves as we are, each other, and allow this open. It's very easy and simple to say. And I think that's why I also want to say that what I'm saying here is just a lot of words at the tip of the iceberg. I feel like it should be experienced. And anyway, this is an open invitation for anybody who wants to visit us and experience. Next slide, Payal. Here's another picture that I like. Again, there's this girl sitting here. So this is an outdoor math counting class, and there's this girl Bobita. She always used to cry, and it helped her if a Nanaji stuck around in school. So, uh, the idea of education was, for me, people need to work together, children, parents, teachers. And I just kept this picture because I kind of like to see it. And each time I tell a different story about it, how she and her Nanaji would do mathematics together. And, when she was comfortable, Nanaji would go and work with the men building the house. And Nanaji would give me advice. He would sit and observe with me. Do you think, have you considered building it like this or like that? And through Nanaji, I'm seeing that how much wisdom there is in the community. There's this idea of social unrest and the fragmentation and the divisiveness. If we just had a way to balance that, keep it aside, or just, and also channel the solutions that will come from within our community. Um, so anyway, that this picture says a lot, and that's one thing it says. Next slide. And this is our first classroom that the Savra man made. We call it Belighar. And everybody who sees it, when you go and visit the Taj Mahal, you stand there for a minute, because architecture overwhelms you, not just purely for its three-dimensional physical construction, but there's a certain awesomeness in people coming together, building something. There's more to a building. And this is what Uday was perhaps trying to tell us, that this has to be an active, dynamic space. Let people build something that is a little bit beyond, that we all work together and that we aspire for. So this has all of that kind of beauty, and that's all I'll say for now for this. Next slide. And so this was during the lockdown, so in March, even our school closed down, and from being in a state of shock to improvising ways to stay in touch with our community. We've done various things, from worksheets to WhatsApp to ground organization. But one day I had this idea that what if we just tell the parents? I mean, it was always the idea to enable parents to teach the children. That is absolutely has to happen. I think a child is like a seed that falls into the soil, and the school and teachers are a part of the soil, but the seed falls. What is closest to the seed is the immediate soil of the family. And we always had the idea that we must empower the parents. And when we work with the parents, we see fundamentally there's a lack of confidence, is what I will say. There's nothing fundamentally they're incapable of. Nobody is. So anyway, the idea was, let's call a meeting of the parents, because we'll tell them that, we'll work with you, you teach your children at home. And because it had been 2 or 3 months, we did not expect many people to show up because we had not been in touch so actively, right? But on the day of the meeting, just so many people showed up, and it was just very powerful. And this picture is just powerful for that reason, like the number of people who just showed up, wanting to be a part of this. Next slide. So this is an example class that we had with the parents. Of course, not all of them were inside. We had to send people back and reorganize the whole thing because of social distancing. But this is a very powerful picture. Not just parents are learning for their children, but when you look in their eyes, it's like they're seeing it was all so simple. Why was it made so difficult? They're truly learning for themselves. And of course, I'm not trying to make it very romantic that the job is done. In fact, please, anything, this is still a process. And we are deeply immersed in first understanding our problems. We are deeply immersed. So anyway, this picture just shows that they are learning, even if they are significantly older now. They see that it's perhaps not so difficult. It is simple. It's just how you teach and how you learn and the basis of that. And next slide. So this is my last slide. I'll end with this slide. So on the top is the entire community of our school. I think this was taken in February, just before the lockdown. And below is me. You cannot find me in there, but the point is that's in the US with some scientists at a national lab. And the reason I wanted to end with this is because a question that gets asked to me, and it is very natural, is people see a dichotomy in my life, from scientists to this, from east to west. And that's why I've subtly put this yin and yang symbol, because for me, there is no dichotomy. But I say that with a lot of awareness, because I know earlier it was all dichotomous and contradictory and fragmented and broken apart. And an instinct was telling me since I was very young, perhaps it is not so, perhaps it is not so, but I didn't know how to live with that, to make it an active part of a worldview, to live and think like maybe it is all coherent. And so this is showing that to me, that it is perhaps coherent also. Our diversity is tremendous. It's unimaginable, right? At one hand, you have the scale of the atomic scale, and at the other hand, you have the scale of the cosmos. So just imagine the diversity. So it's a very profound diversity. But I feel there's also something that keeps it coherent. And the East and the West, science or religion, me working as a social worker or as a scientist, there are some practices of truth, disciplines of faith that keep it all together in a way that one word is, I'm just grateful for. I'm just very grateful for that. And I'm just grateful to be doing this, to be immersed, learning the problems, listening to people, and having this opportunity to see, can it be coherent or is it just broken up? I don't know. It's something that together we all want to find out. And with that, I want to end my monologue.
So thank you so much, Arjun. Indeed, very powerful images, I must say, and quite an enriching talk. So maybe I can start with two questions that just came to my mind. I'll begin with your last slide. The yin and the yang symbol that you showed. And, my question is, in today's world of fragmented realities, with the divisive politics that we see and so much of difference and the hate politics that we see, how easy or difficult do you think would it be to, really move ahead and work with an ideology where you say that there's not much dichotomy? I know it's definitely you're saying that with a lot of responsibility and you're aware of what you're saying, but how easy do you think would it be for you to carry forward your work with that kind of a very strong standpoint that you hold on to? That's my first question. And my second question is, I mean, looking at your presentation, one thing is very clear, that you strongly hold on to the idea of coherence. And that came out very strongly in your presentation, where you have been trying to, build a very organic, very participatory kind of an approach, right from, how you've engaged people in trying to visualize how your school infrastructure would be looking like. So I understood that you're trying to build it as a very active, very dynamic kind of a vibrant space, the school. So how do you see this also being carried forward in terms of how the school would look like, not just the infrastructure, but in terms of what you would be teaching, the engagement between children? And when we talk of education, there are a number of elements that come into the picture, various components, right, from the community, the school management committee, and so many other, when we talk of whole school transformation, for example. So these are my two questions. If you would like to share your
Yeah,
thoughts.
sure. I might have, since there was such deep questions, I might ask you to paraphrase. I'll just try to paraphrase the first one. You said, how easy will it be to live with an ideology that keeps it all together in a world that is apparently fragmented? Is that your question? The
Correct,
first
correct,
one.
yeah.
Yeah. I accept that the challenge is going to be at the level of existential. It's nothing that will become, I think that's what is humbling about when I say this. And that's why I can say it so peacefully and also feeling so moved, is because I'm very humbled about it. I am not, there was a time when I was very reactionary and angry, but now it's a very humbling thing. Let me use a metaphor. We look at a tree in a painting and we sit and admire it. Look how peaceful it is, standing strong in the wind. But if you look down, maybe at the root system, you'll see it is learning to live with predators, life that threatens it. So it is, there's always an up and down between what's your enemy, what's your friend, the good and the bad. So it's a constant dance. That's what I feel life is. We just have to have a worldview to know that, and not just intellectually. That's a mistake that even I was making. You cannot just do it intellectually. There has to be something experiential about it. So for me, I think I will get stronger. I don't know, but I think the challenge is almost at the level of existential, because the diversity is tremendous, right? All the different divisiveness. Sometimes, I mean, I feel I've come a long way, but there are times I get tremendously angry to the point I lose my concentration, and I get stressed that I cannot lose my concentration. I have to, right now, I have to keep it together. So mostly I am able to, but so much to say about the challenge and my own vulnerability to the scale of this problem. But yes, I do feel determined, and I do feel I try to do certain practices of experience which will help me and guide me in this path, which if somebody wants to know, I can talk about it. There's nothing secret about it. That's what Siddhartha Gautam's message was, who became the Buddha later on. And your second question, remind me again, was about the education, the vision of the school,
About
right?
the,
Like, what will
yeah.
education be?
Right.
Uh, Honestly, it feels like I've just started my research project in physics and I say, I don't know. but it's not a very weak, I don't know, like, oh God, I don't know. It's something that is evolving on the ground. It is something that will become clearer as we go. And of course, one thing is that children are small, right? So it's also very, there is something very controlled about this experiment also, because when a child is small, I think what we need to develop is the core confidence, the core health, which is just not mental but physical, and overall happiness. But the exact vision, I don't feel too restless to speak about. It will be something that is contextual. People also need to get involved. It has to be also guided by what is livelihood in this context. What do people want to aspire for? So for example, I say if somebody wants to go to IIT or become an aerospace engineer, I'll sit up and do mathematics with the child, no problem. But I also want to see farming as a very real thing. So for example, the local KVK is finally getting they're building a relationship with us, and we truly want to develop a course in agriculture. So a child begins by learning how to grow a plant, and you observe the science of it, the physiology of it, and later you also connect numbers to it, accountings to it, economics to it. So, okay, now I'm just rambling, okay, because I don't have a definite answer to give you, but the idea is to explore everything. And I don't, I don't even want to say this is my model right now, because I believe we are making the model, it is evolving. But it will be that meets the aspirations of the people, and hopefully also what is sustainable in our context and in the context of our life today in this country, on this earth. But it's like also a big question for all of us, and we are exploring it actively.
Great. I think we'll open the house for questions. We'll open the floor for more questions. Uh, Audience, you can unmute yourself and directly ask Arjun. Anybody who has any questions?
Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead, Sanjay.
Yeah. Thanks, Arjun. This is very, very engaging, I must say. Brilliant
Thank you.
presentation. Arjun, I do quite a lot of work with community engagement. And the thing that I want to learn, and probably also if you can explain whether two different communities in rural and urban setup will behave differently. Whenever I've been working in this space, and whenever we try to do a lot of participatory activities, engaging with the community, we see two things, that there is always a groupism, that, and also at times when we are trying to build something, particularly in an urban setup, we always see there are certain always negative. And my own experience says that a very small group people who are negative eventually win the situation, in the sense that if they say no, we don't want to build this here, or we don't want to do it here, and eventually the enthusiasm of the majority of the people dies down, and they often are able to dominate. So what are the methodologies and means? Have you faced a situation, and if yes, if you have faced, how do you win over or convey the messages that what is the right way to do it? That's one. And the second, coming back to the schools, uh, you were talking about empowering the parents. How much does that really translate into a long-term action when you're trying to achieve your vision? So, this, yeah.
Sanjay, thank you. Those questions, I'm glad you asked those questions, because those are two pillars of our experience. I always had a sense, like you also said, it somehow feels like the people who don't want the people to stay together are few, but I like to say like they have the biggest loudspeaker. They have a way to manipulate. And I'm not being trying to be very, what do you say, cynical or something. There's something about divide and rule, is also a very part of human nature. One thing that I often reflect on, we are taught very simply in history, that the British came and they did divide and rule, as if they came and did make crisscross. See, the thing is, again, I go back to the metaphor of a tree. underneath there's a nudge going on between good and bad, this and that, what I like and don't like. So anyway, I'm beginning like this, Sanjay, because that's what helps me in those moments, because I have experienced that, we have experienced that, that the majority wants to be do something, but the majority is not also very active and vocal, because they're also affected by this negativity and this light speaker phenomenon. So there is no recipe for me, Sanjay, but I try to be just be present in those moments. And depending on what the stakes are, I sometimes you have to act, or sometimes you have, okay, let's wait, let's see what happens. They are saying these negative things, but I have faith that we all need this. And I just look around at the silent majority. I just look in the eyes, because I have been one of those people, right? A silent in the majority, just listening to the negativity, even in the news, for example. I think that's what a lot of news is. So I have experienced that, and I kind of trust myself. Therefore, I trust the silent majority. And it's not very romantic. It's a very vulnerable place for me to be in. But then I also, that's why, another thing is, that's why we are building a community relationship. So we have people who are in the silent majority, but working with us, and we come together. And sometimes I don't know, I go to them, what should we do? These people are threatening our very project. And the latest example is, they told me, why don't you just let it be? These people don't want to work. They're trying to distract us. Let's keep on working. They'll go out on their own. So sometimes it's just patience and just waiting and believing. But like, so much to say, there is no recipe. Because sometimes you have to act. Maybe you have to tell those people, please leave. And the more you tell them, the more they will fight and create negativity. Fortunately for me, for us, it has not come to that, because also perhaps because our engagement is education, which directly tends to bring out the best in people at some level. But yes, there is no formula for me, but just to remain present with your faith, and also your analytical mind, understanding everything, just waiting. Sometimes I just wait for the negative energy to kind of fizzle out, or sometimes I feel like maybe there is something in the negative energy. Let it interact with the positive. Let's see what comes out. And I wait. We wait. So I'm not being able to give you a very definitive answer, because I don't have a definitive rule book to play with. Um, anyway, I've gone so deep into that question and answer. Sanjay, please remind me the second. Oh, about the empowerment and how much it will go.
Right.
Sanjay, that, like I said, this is the way we talk. A child is born, and a child is a fully potent seed. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the child. But how a seed grows depends on the ecosystem of the soil. As a school, we are still a little farther away from that seed. The parents are the closest. So we cannot really develop till we empower the parents. We have to. So we are working on it, and there's lots of hope. But I think when we will be able to do it, I think that will complete the ecosystem in a very profound and fundamental way. I wish we were a little older. I would have told you more about how that is going, because we're still, like I said, very actively immersed in it, working more from a sense of belief and noting all the problems there are to do that. But it's my belief, and I have seen hope for it. Like in this lockdown, there are parents who have actually started to work with the child at home. And that is that is a very humbling and beautiful thing to behold. And it reaffirms my faith that yes, we must do this.
Yeah, Arjun, I have a similar, almost a related question to community engagement. I also closely work with tea garden communities, and what we have observed is, when we talk of community engagement, particularly with the tea garden communities, there are a lot of challenges that come along the way, particularly because it's really difficult. For example, we call a meeting with parents. It's sometimes really difficult for parents to come, because most of the parents are out there in the gardens working, or in the fields, or I mean in the factories. So what your pictures actually showed was, right from the beginning, you have been continuously engaging with parents in terms of how you're trying to visualize the building, and so on and so forth. But how easy has it been for you to work with parents? Because this is a challenge we have faced in a lot of tea gardens. Because even if you call a meeting on a Sunday, Sundays are, for most gardens, it's open, so you have to actually chalk out which is an off day for the workers out there in the gardens, and like these kind of problems that actually emerge. So could you just elaborate on that?
No, that's a challenge we still face, Meenakshi. And in the beginning, it was very
Because there are also
demoralizing.
very related issues, other issues in terms of the alcoholism problem. So where you show that you're interacting with parents and you're trying to engage them, and the literacy program or whatever you're conducting in classrooms, perhaps will really go a long way. But there are a lot of other issues that also need to be understood, because alcoholism continues to remain a major problem in most
Yes.
gardens.
Yeah.
In terms of community engagement, how you have to mitigate waste and try in this aspect.
Minakshi, your voice is breaking.
Yeah, I lost you in the second part of the question.
Hello?
Is this better now? Am I audible?
No,
Yeah.
your voice is
You are breaking.
Well, maybe I can get a sense of what she's asking, so I can take it.
Community. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think your second question was if other problems
I'm
in the tea
talking
plantation.
related of alcoholism. We need to understand it not just in isolation, but all the related aspects. That's what, in
Yes.
terms of community engagement, how are you trying to
Okay. So I'll begin by answering the first part where you noted organizing a meeting in a tea plantation is not as simple. Hey, we're coming on Sunday. Let's everyone get together. We're going to have a meeting. It's not going to work like that. It is not. And when you're living within, you see why. It's a one-day holiday they get, and they have a lot of work to do. So it will not happen. And many people struggle with that, not just you, many organizations, especially who come from the outside in and they want to do a program, a meeting. Good or bad, I don't know, but it may not work like that because Sundays are busy days, and a lot of people go to church now and they want to be home. And the idea of a meeting, they have also gone to so many meetings, and at some level they must also get tired, like what is going to happen. So we also dealt with that. So that is why this has been a lot of legwork, meeting people when they're ready to meet. And for me, because I knew we are the one who have to listen and learn and understand. And through that process of why they don't come to the meeting, you learn so much. And it is essential we do. And so we still call meetings on Sundays, and not many people will show up, but sometimes many people will show up. It depends, that kind of goes up and down. But what I'm noticing is now the school is becoming like a little bit of a positive space. We're developing it as a community center. So people like to come to the school. So when we call a meeting, it becomes a little simpler now. Anyway, to answer your first question, that is not a problem. That is just reality. So we should not make it a problem. We have to just think and act differently. I think the second question was related to alcoholism and other such things. I could not hear it very well, so I'll just kind of extrapolate from what I think you are asking me. Yes, alcoholism is a big, significant problem. I mean, I don't know how to give it enough weight even. It is significant. And we don't have a direct plan on how to isolate it or disentangle it. Maybe there are focus programs we can do. But right now, I think we are just working on a very general positive energy where hopefully all of what we're trying to do feeds back on people, and they realize. Anyway, I don't even want to go there. Alcoholism is something we are not directly addressing. We're just noting all the problems. When a child does not come to school, when a parent does not come to school, we note often it is that. And we just note it. We don't know what to do yet, but we have to. And I feel a part of the positivity that we grow in the school must have a feedback on that also. But that's a very indirect. So we are doing too big of a problem for us right now.
Meenakshi, can I ask a supplementary question?
Yeah, please go ahead, Sanjay.
Yeah. Arjun, you said something very interesting that the negative people have a bigger loudspeaker, they are more vociferous. Do you think that if I play it around with the positive part of the community, which is in the majority, that I empower them or capacitate them with a bigger loudspeaker, with a bigger voice, with a more vociferous, will that kind of able to counter it, or will it generate more conflicts?
my
Just wonder.
instinct is my instinct is and what I act on, I don't do that. It might aggravate things. I think sometimes the silent majority, the biggest loudspeaker is action, just doing positive things little by little, day by day. Because the thing is, unfortunately, the negative, boisterous, vociferous people are good at fighting, the art and skill of fighting and keeping everybody in agitation. And the simple majority have work to do, they've got things to tackle. I would not bring them into that and dissipate the energy. I would rather develop means and methods to live life peacefully, to continue doing what you can and let them be, listen to them, just deal with it. But giving them an equal loudspeaker, sometimes I really feel like doing it, but I don't think I will do it. I don't think, as yet, I don't think I would do it. So I don't think I would not ask you also to do it.
Thanks. I'm
And
just
it should be
wondering.
tried. It should be tried, I guess. I don't know.
Anybody else? You can please unmute yourself and ask.
There is a question in the chat box, Meenakshi. You might like to.
I just, yes, I just saw that. Arjun, there's a question. Payal, could you read that question?
Yeah. Using this platform, what other problems of the tea garden communities would you like us to highlight? It's from Ailana.
Oh, for me to, would you like us? Okay, you're asking me what what other problems? I think if one central message, and unfortunately, I will speak very abstractly because the particular problems we know of education and alcohol. So what I want to highlight is not like how we think and how we speak about the tea plantation communities. For example, if we always say they're backward, they have many problems, this and that. See, what happens is that creates a kind of a negativity which sustains a cycle of disempowerment. Now, I'm not saying that we should not do something. We should do something, but we have to maybe see it in a little bit of a bigger picture, because you see there are elements from within that will try to keep it like that in that narrative. So we have to step outside, see it. I use the word, give it a little bit of an empowering basis so that people from within who can do something, they get an opportunity. Because you see, these same loudspeaker people are in this community too, because there is an idea of a disorder being durable. I think there was an Sanjeev Barua, somebody wrote that. There's a lot of truth in it. There are disorders from within a community, and there's some people use it to keep it like that because somehow they're benefiting from it. So I think one takeaway is, let's open the doors and windows on this tea plantation community, because when I work with the people, I see a lot of hope. I have, like you say, I worked at CERN, I've worked at this place, that place, and I'm here and I see the same quality in people here. So all I want to say is, let's bring in new energy, a new perspective, because there is a social unrest, but the very same people can turn this into a very socially positive movement. So yes, I'm speaking very abstractly because I also want to speak with the responsibility, and I don't want to go into each particular problem right now because that just takes a lot of time and you have to establish a context and speak very carefully, especially because I want to avoid any divisiveness right now. So that is one thing I want to highlight too. Let's be a little positive and empowering about the whole thing from within, and accordingly come out and meet tea plantation communities.
I think, Arjun, I want to add something to what you just said. I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but like you said, that it's important to change this narrative where we just look at the community from one lens and try to, there's a lot of disempowerment happening in that narrative. I also think that similarly, looking at tea gardens as just one homogeneous entity is also somewhat problematic, because there are a
Yes.
lot of good initiatives also equally
Mm-hmm.
happening. So I
Mm-hmm.
just don't want to club tea gardens into one just
Yes.
singular monolithic idea of all tea gardens are just bad. There are managements doing great work as well. So I think it's
Yes.
also important for us to understand that. We have one more question from Masoom.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, are you also planning to venture into adult education at some point, given that you are engaging with parents already?
Yes, I think it is like teaching the parents is a natural process to that adult education. Yes, how it will unfold, I don't know, but it is very much on our mind. And at this point, I also want to say that relatedly, so we are an educational institution, but because of what we have done, we also have livelihood opportunities growing around us, so there are men doing agriculture, there are women doing stitching, and they are empowering themselves. So in some ways it is a kind of a precursor to an adult education, because they're growing in confidence. And over here we are giving each other freedom to work, express creativity, confidence. So adult education is already happening, its foundation is being laid, but the various specific programs still will emerge. But yes, it is something that we must necessarily do.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Milind, I can see you unmute yourself. Yeah. And Manu also. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
hi Arjun. Thank you for sharing your journey. My
Thank you.
question will be is how Anajori could support you. What all you may need, because Anajori wanted to support organization or individual who sincerely or genuinely working.
Hmm.
Whether it's a field of education or environment or animal care. That's one thing that not that we do not have the magic stick. We would love to have the magic stick, but at least we can give some support, and we would like to know what kind of support you need. And the second question is, as you are working with the elders, what do you call adults, I'm just thinking behind, we invited Samir Bordoloi, had started working with Samir Bordoloi, also with um, Digonto Hoikia, who started piggery, commercial level piggery, or Neelam Datta, and who started, fishery or wealth of knowledge about fishery. How can we bring all this together? These are the resources. We are, able to find out genuine people working in those areas. Maybe we will be able to connect.
Hmm.
Maybe you can connect them to the tea garden people,
Hmm.
and giving hope and ideas that they don't have to be always tea garden workers. There's others way
Hmm.
to do stuff. I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud. What could you do? It's like network, the web. How can
Hmm.
you work
Hmm.
together? In
Hmm.
it.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I think first of all, thank you so much. Anytime somebody says offers support, it really means a lot to me and us. Uh, so of course we need help in help and support and technicals. Then I mean, like I said, a school exists in a very rich ecosystem, and there must be natural relationships in place for it to grow. It's a public system, right? It's a big thing. So, but yes, for how Energery can help. So there are many specifics I can list, from teacher education to managing and interacting with the government when it comes to various things, helping us build relationships and to fundraising. But I will say for now, a good step to begin working is if maybe once the lockdown is done, Energery comes and visits us, I visit you. Because like I said, a lot is in the experience, and I just don't want to list off everything right now, but I would love for us to sit down together and even discuss this wider idea of a network and relationship, because there are many good people doing many things. I also know Samir. I spent a lot of time with him. But one thing that I see is what we need to do is each community needs to have determined people to carry on that work. So right now, for example, I'll tell you right now, we have a small team of 4 to 5 men working on an agricultural initiative. And this for me is like an experiment in develop, like I almost talk like we have to cultivate a social nutrient soil. We have to cultivate social relationships of leadership, skill, the many things that go into doing a successful agricultural venture also. So I think these webs will grow slowly. It will require a lot of patience, and that's what we're trying to do. My idea is also to empower men here that what do we want to do? We can do it. And then I know there's Samir there, I know there's you there, but right now, immediately, if you come, we'll not be able to do anything at a big scale because first we are establishing our own capability, our own strengths, our own leadership, our basic social capital. But I appreciate that, Milan, because that's my hope too, that these webs grow in the places and they connect. And a vital ingredient for me is patience, and I believe it will happen. I think Masoom is my friend, and I was talking to her this morning only that there are many things that are not going right, but perhaps this is what we had to go through to make it right, and it'll be a slow process. There's a whole generation that is growing, and we'll connect and help each other out. So yes, I guess a visit by Enajori or me to you guys is due to kind of flesh this out.
And I have another question, you know, maybe two questions. One is that what is your like short-term goal, like 2 years goal, or then 5 years goal, long-term goal?
Short-term goal to at a 2 years level is basic organizational development. I mean, having an accountant, administrative assistant, school buildings, just basic core team of skilled and confident people. That is and just the nitties and gritties of action, curriculum, pedagogy, classes, a core team. That is our immediate goal. Uh, Long-term goal, 5 years is I don't know. It's very hard for me to say right now because truly, like I'm Milan, I think people get frustrated with me when they ask me too far out because I'm particularly not doing that because I have learned from my experience in physics, and maybe it's particular to me that for a while it's okay to just go into the problem and just live in it. And when I come out, then I have a very good far term vision. So right now I'm particularly keeping it very small because if I make a vision too far out, then it's purely me extrapolating. I need to create these relationships within us so that I get a little bit, there's a more coherency and bigger agency of what we want to do. So for various reasons, I'm not looking too far out, but yes, immediately we have to continue building the school. We have to develop a core capacity. I mean, even legal, financial processes have their compliances, rules. It's not trivial. So at science, what science has told me, either the devil is in the detail or God. I don't know what you want to look at it. I think God is in the details too. So details of every work need to be done very well. We need to be a sound organization. So the immediate goal is just very immediate tasks in some sense.
Okay, thank you, Arjun. Back to,
More
back
questions.
to
Yeah.
you.
I saw a Manu unmute. Maybe Manu can go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you can hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we
Yes.
can.
So, namaskar everyone. Namaskar Arjun. Pleased to see you.
Namaskar, Manu.
Namaskar.
And it more or less the same question than Milin, but said differently. Could you explain or express your dream of the duration of this trust?
My dream.
Yes.
God.
For example, I can help you in one point. The difficulty to begin or build the school is something now. And you said that's immediately. But what are your plans to be efficient in the long term? Because as you are a scientist, you know that everything is going, it's not for a long way. But I feel that you are not doing that just for 1 year or 10 years.
No. Like I told, I will again, maybe I'm, between being very wise and stubborn, it's a very fine line. So I'll be stubborn again. I'm just, again, I've learned this from science. There was like, for example, when I was trying to answer a question of physics, for almost 2-3 years, I was constructing the infrastructure to answer that question. I was constructing tools, processes, and I think that's what I'm kind of doing right now is construct this. I'm not constructing. I hate the limitation of language. I make it I. But that's why I think we all should experience this. We are working with many people and we are listening to everybody. Everybody has an idea. So we are trying to make use a metaphor of soil, a very rich soil. And once we do that, it is my belief, growth is nature's law. So I'm very focused on that. It takes, I wish I had words to tell you how much energy it takes. Like, I think like Sanjay said, those meetings where you have negative elements with a loudspeaker. That was such a good question because we spend so much time in that. How to do, how to live, how to keep carrying on. So we're cultivating a basic social richness, coherency, that we all will go together in some direction. But yes, Manu, if you ask me my dream, at some level, I just want to see the children laughing, me laughing, we all being happy with opportunities and a sense of confidence together. Like, it's my dream, this problem of alcoholism in tea plantations, anemia, the larger economic crises are not so challenging and beating down on people as I have known for so many years. It has affected my family, me, it affects people. There's a big weight hanging down on all of us. Maybe a dream one day that will not be there. Maybe one day all of this social unrest that people talk about will not be there. And this so many people that everybody says, so many people in the tea plantation, social unrest will unfurl into like a beautiful energy. Maybe you asked me for my dream, so that's a dream, right? A man can dream like that. Or what happens, I don't know. We'll just try. But what we are doing in the now, for me, that is how maybe we'll get to the dream. I don't know. Maybe is a word that I use a lot, and it's not a word of resignation, but maybe we'll try.
I can do just a joke, and I will leave after that to work here in Europe. But I think you are planting a very beautiful seeds in some years there, and you will share your smiles for a long time.
Amen.
That's it. That's it. So
have
a nice day, all of you. And I'm very proud of what you are doing, Arjun, and all the team.
Thank you, Manu. That
Thank you,
always
Manu.
means a lot to me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We have a question from Mailana. The question is, girls in tea garden communities often get married very young. Are you taking any steps to curb that? And also,
Actively.
how are you addressing the problem of girl child education?
That is something I wish Alana come and visit us. That is something it is something that I'm so sensitive to, and we all are working so hard. I mean, already 2 or 3 girls had dropped out of school and they were volunteering with us, doing various things. And I talked to them like, why are you not in school? Or why are you not? So, it was very powerful for me to tell them, study, we are here. Dream whatever you want to be, and be very careful of all the things that can distract you. And I'll not name it right now because it trivializes things. So we have girls who have dropped out of school coming back to study with us. And it's just so beautiful to see. You give them an open space where they're allowed to make mistakes and learning happens so beautifully. So that is something that is very immediately present in my mind. And there are girls, by the way, in addition to a primary school, we have what we are developing is a student resource center. The idea is that we begin with tuitions, the regular tuitions, to make it a very empowering place for students to come together, to help each other, have technology, basically put the trust in the student and the child. So anyway, to cut this, it is something that we are working very hard on, and it's something that I'm very sensitive about. We also have a women's tailoring team as an opportunity. It's a tailoring team on the surface, but if you go inside the room and you see what is happening, it is creating space for women to come, be, discuss, empower, whatever it is. I don't even go there. I feel like this is for, I mean, it humbles me to say that I'm doing anything for them. I am just a part and hopefully an enabler. But I think we are really focused on that, and we would like to take it up to scale. But anytime you talk about scale, Alana, what you need is human resources, because try teaching economics or mathematics, it's not easy. You need people to teach, not just good science, history or whatever, but compassion. We need a lot of compassion here, because people are coming from homes and communities where you just don't go straight to class. You have to go deeper. Anyway, I'll end here by saying that we are actively focusing on that.
Questions from anybody else? Final few questions.
Just to Ailana, I think she was very specific about getting married young, and I didn't want to say that because I almost feel like it's my responsibility. But I'll say, talk to these girls. I don't know. I feel very humble to tell them, just be very careful about getting married. Please be whoever you want to be. Please know how to support yourself, and maybe then get married. I try to say, almost suggest that to them, because sometimes it's too much for me to tell somebody of their life's decision. But I try to talk this to the girls very humbly as much as I can.
Arjun, are you also working with any of the adolescent groups in the garden or the mothers groups?
I know there are mothers groups in gardens, other gardens. I'm not sure exactly if we have a mothers group in Boisabi in this particular tea estate. We have other kinds of groups, but
Right.
Honestly, in some ways, I mean, if there is any group, we are working with them, but actually I'm not very sensitive to what other groups are there. If there is anybody, they just come here and we kind of try and work together. But all of these mothers groups and things, they function, sometimes they don't function. So it's very hard to get a sense also what's happening. So if I spend too much time on that, so that's why I said, okay, let's just start fresh. Let's start doing things and see what happens. So I'm still trying to find out all of these things. Sometimes there's a group and they're not been functioning for so long.
Yeah.
And there's a
Not
whole
very
history
active.
behind
Yeah.
it, right?
Correct. Yeah. And what about like community radio and other such initiatives? Are they there?
I wish somebody would come here and start a community radio, because that would be great. I'm limited. Sometimes I'm limited by the fact I have 2 hands and 2 feet. But community radio, newsletter, a fortnightly newsletter, newspaper, these are all things we need to talk about.
I could
what is
just mention of something called Radio Brahmaputra in Dibrugarh. They have
Yeah,
this.
and I know them.
They're
I
doing
know
great
them.
work. Yeah, they're doing
Yeah, I
great
know
work.
them. Yeah.
The young girls from the community are doing great work. Radio talk shows on menstrual health and hygiene, on nutrition. These are very important and relevant, talk shows that they are hosting. Doing
Yes,
great work. So maybe we could
actually
build contacts and networks.
one particular lady who works in there from the Tea Plantation community was supposed to visit us, but that's when the whole thing would happen,
Pandemic
the
happened.
lockdown.
Yeah.
But I intend to even get to know technically what it takes in the sense of a technical resource to start a small radio station. What power antenna you need, just basic information like that. But
Right.
that is very much on my mind, because we need to have a way to discuss what is present and affecting us. So I think I fully agree with you, and thank you for saying that.
We'll perhaps call it a day if we do not have any more questions. It's a Sunday. A lot of people will be busy, I think. Yeah. Any more questions from anyone? Final questions? Sarit, would you like to say something?
No, I'm fine. I've been listening to the interesting journey, and that is good enough for me right now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, Arjun, any final comments? Anything you would like to say before we close the session?
No, really, I think I've said all that I wanted to say, and I think if anything, I will say that maybe it's I always feel like maybe it's a time to kind of work together, all of us together, We
Right.
all see a problem from different perspectives. And it's one of the most humbling things to set your perspective aside, listen to somebody else, see why they're acting. It's profound. I mean, it humbles me to say it, but I feel that is a skill maybe we all need to start developing, and it'll actually make me feel strengthened if I hear more people trying to do that, because it's not easy. And I'll just end with saying thank you for organizing this and giving me an opportunity to share with you all and get your feedback and
Thank you for
questions.
agreeing to be a speaker. And I must say, it's really been a very enriching and an engaging session. It was really interesting to look at things from a different perspective, and the way you're doing things. I really wish you best of luck, and I really look forward to visiting you soon
Please
and
do. I look
see.
forward to that
Yeah,
too.
yes, yeah, and hopefully we'll work out ways by which we can work together and see how things
Yes.
move
Yes.
on from here on.
Yes.
So I, on
Yes.
behalf of the entire team, would like to thank each one of you who joined us this morning. So stay connected with the Anajuri virtual platform. We have our regular sessions across themes, across issues. So looking forward to staying connected with you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Arjun.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.